I wish I knew to delegate more sooner. Let's divide, conquer, and report back. Sometimes it doesn't matter why we used to do something, but it's like, what are we going to do next? And how do we want to design this to scale in the future? Sometimes there's no luxury of time. We want to give them the opportunity to make the best hire for their team. Like, is there a way that we can repurpose somebody and give them new skills?
Shirin, happy Friday. You're wearing some incredible glasses. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
And so I guess a good place to start is it'd be really great to learn a bit about you, what you've been doing, your journey, and what you're doing at Fastly right now.
Sure. So I'm currently head of global talent acquisition at Fastly. So I own all of talent acquisition, tech, non-tech, talent acquisition operations, as well as international. And I've always been selling. So really started off my career in real estate, then went into sales, and now I'm selling a dream at Fastly.
Awesome. And I know a lot of people don't really talk about this enough, but I think it should be celebrated. You've spent the last 8 years at Fastly. You've had 4 different roles. You've gone through an IPO. So I'd really love to know what's kept you at Fastly. And also, I guess, what have some of your biggest challenges been and learnings moving into a leadership role, especially global leadership position?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I joined Fastly and really wanted to get into the tech space was I really wanted to see the impact that my work had on a company's growth every single day. And from when we were about 100 people to even today, I can definitely see the impact of my work and my team's work in our company's growth and how, we're bringing in the people and shaping the company in the direction of the company every day. I also really wanted to work with smart people. And so being on the talent acquisition side, getting to, really shape the type of people that we're attracting, I'm able to, constantly surround myself with really smart people. And, I think a lot of the time, regardless of the company that you're working at, you're solving similar problems, and it's solving problems every day, but it's, to me, who you're solving those problems with. And that's what's really kept me here.
Awesome. That's really cool.
I guess in terms of the challenges piece, for me, it was, moving in from an IC to a manager role, was thinking, I constantly want to help everyone on my team do everything the right way instead of really giving them that opportunity to learn and figure it out themselves. And now, as I wish I knew to delegate more sooner and just let people attend the meeting, we shouldn't both be attending meetings or all of us be attending meetings together, but let's divide, conquer, and report back so we can really, save time and give everyone the opportunity to learn for themselves instead of me trying to, protect everyone and really give answers as much as I could.
Yeah. And was this something that was like an epiphany? It was like, oh, well, maybe I should change the approach, or was this something that you saw? What kind of led to that transitional way, a different way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say it was an epiphany, but I think it was direct feedback.
Yeah.
Somebody gave to me why are you both in that meeting? And it's like, oh, well, in case they have a question in the meeting, I can answer it too, because I've been there for so long. I think I have a lot of historical knowledge. And I've also, sometimes it doesn't matter why we used to do something, but it's what are we going to do next? And how do we want to design this to scale in the future? So, I'm here for historical knowledge, but I don't really necessarily need to be there in terms of building what the next steps look like.
Yeah. And is there something that you find particularly effective in kind of giving that ownership to your team, or a way to get the most out of your team and provide them with the answers, but letting them go and figure it out for themselves? Is it something that you found to be really effective in letting that happen?
Yeah, I think really it comes down to being very clear, right? It's I'm going to have you step in here, or if you're going to lead this project, digest it for 48 hours, come back to me with, why you think we're doing this, what is the change and the impact, what resources you need, and how much time do you need to do this, right? Instead of just being take this over, what exactly does that mean? So I think just being really clear in terms of why I'm delegating and what the expectations are. I don't think I did that very well at the beginning. And, I think both me and whoever I was delegating it to would get disappointed in like if the outcomes weren't what we expected. But I think it's, delegate, let someone process and kind of come back together to understand what next steps look like.
Yeah. And, this company, Fastly, that you're at, has had this tremendous pace of growth and been hugely successful and IPO'd. What kind of challenges has that brought to the organization, specifically, the talent function?
Well, so I think before we used to move a lot quicker, where we were hiring first qualified candidate, and like the recruiter would be like, okay, I think they should interview with, this person, this person, this person, and that person. And we would just do it and make the hire and move on. We've moved to more structured interviews. So we are doing a lot more work up front where hiring managers have to come up with their entire interview plan. Like, what are the competencies? What are the questions that are going to assess that competency? Who are potential interviewers? So we're really enabling them and partnering with them. Like, we're consulting them and they're kind of move the ownership to like they're making the hiring decision. So, it's frustrating, I'm sure, to do a lot of the work up front, but once we do, everybody is really aligned and we can honestly say that we have a fair and equitable process because we're asking candidates the same questions every step of the way. And we're getting multiple candidates to, the video and on-site stage from, we have best practices, but we're trying to get 4 candidates to the video stage, 2 from underrepresented backgrounds before making that decision. So it's a lot of it's different. We're moving a little bit slower. We're trying to be flexible, but ultimately we've just had to put a lot more structure and rigor around things.
And how, I'm sure at the pace that you folks have been growing, that balance of building fair, equitable process, robust process that might take a little bit longer overall, and then still meeting the demands of the business could be a tricky balance to maintain. How have you found you've been able to do that and get the buy-in from people to maybe take their time to get the best results or the right results?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest challenges for me personally, because we want to do the right thing, but we also realize that it takes a long time. And, there's a lot of roles at Fastly where there's only one person doing them. So sometimes there's no luxury of time. So we really just we've gone out of policing, like, wait, you need one more person to get to this final stage before you make a decision, to saying, again, this is a best practice. This is why it's important to have diverse teams. This is like what the end result will look like. However, you are the hiring manager and you need to make the decision and you need to own it. And we're here to support you. So I think it's us slowly getting away from being in the middle to just being there as that consultant.
And how have you found that? Have you found that, by giving them that advice and then letting them make the decisions for themselves and not policing, they tend to make the right decisions, or do they just revert back to the mean of doing things how it was done before when the guardrails are up? Like, what have you found?
I mean, I think it depends on the hiring manager, right? I think it depends on the hiring manager. So we just like to, make sure we're documenting like, hey, this is the recommendation we went, you have discussed it with your leader and you're okay moving forward. But, we've also learned that so right now we're really building out like a hiring manager training. I don't think we've necessarily enabled them and trained them. So people, when we have new managers, we have managers that have been at Fastly for a long time. So there's not necessarily that equal scale of enablement. So that's something that we're working on now to make sure everybody has the tools, knows where the tools are to make these decisions for themselves.
Talentful provides flexible recruiting solutions to the world's most ambitious companies. Are you thinking about ways to add flexibility to your talent function? With recent market volatility and hiring set to return to growth mode in the near future, there's never been a better time to choose the right partner to help you scale. Talentful's embedded sourcing, recruiting, coordination, and talent advisory services have been trusted by the world's leading brands. Companies such as Atlassian, Microsoft, Expedia, Pinterest, Waymo, and more. Whether you're hiring across engineering, go-to-market, or G&A, Talentful has got you covered. To find out how Talentful can help you, visit talentful.com.
And I know at the beginning of this conversation, you were saying how you put a lot of ownership on the hiring managers. It's their job to start at the start of the requisition, to build the job spec, to build the competency framework, the interview panel. Did you get any pushback from that initially? Was that this isn't my job, this is recruiting's job? Did you get any of that, and how did you overcome that?
I don't think we got a lot of pushback, but I think it was just a new muscle for folks to build, to think through that. And I think, for newer managers or recently promoted managers, I don't think they really understood what competencies were. So I think what ended up happening was it was just like, recruiting is taking too long to open my role. Or it's like, well, we haven't really started your role yet because these things aren't done. So actually what we did is we created this really elaborate interview question bank. So we pulled from like SHRM, from Gartner, from everywhere that we could find them, and have different competencies and potential questions for those, and what a good rubric looks like what is a good answer, what is an okay answer, what is a red flag answer. So in these forms that we have, our intake forms, that when we're asking hiring managers to build out these questions, there's already like a bank of a bunch of questions. So we're trying to also help make it easier for them, but it's ultimately, again, like we want to give them the opportunity to make the best hire for their team.
Yeah. And what's one of the biggest benefits you've seen from, having a structured process and having the hiring managers really think and be thoughtful about each job they're putting live? What's the biggest benefit you found?
I think we're getting better hires, where before, I would look at a scorecard for a candidate and it'd be like, yeah, hire them. I'd definitely get a beer with them at an airport, just the basic cool factor. But then no one was, asking them if they knew how to code or actually really assessing them for what we needed them to do. And when we were smaller, everybody wanted to like everybody and everybody wanted to be friends. So nobody also wanted to give feedback on if they're not actually hitting those marks. So now I think it just makes everything easier.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, we've had the pleasure of knowing each other for a while, and I've been speaking to you about the kinds of things you've been doing at Fastly over time. And one of the things I've been really impressed by is, how you've handled the growth of the business, but also how you've handled tricky situations, slowdowns, downturns. Obviously, we had COVID, and now there's some, more economic uncertainty. And if we look around the tech sector, there's lots of layoffs happening. People are and being laid off, and recruitment's normally one of the first places to be impacted. But I guess you've really advocated for your teams and used those quiet periods to find ways to benefit and opportunities to grow your team. Can you talk a bit about that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of maybe hiring managers and talent leaders out there that are entering a quieter period and aren't quite sure what to do or don't have any ideas, and they're getting pretty concerned. So can you maybe talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first time this happened was right at the beginning of the pandemic, where people were doing layoffs. We didn't know how it was really going to affect our business. We did a pause on hiring. We were just like, let's just take a beat to see like how this pandemic is going to play out. And our company was really gracious across the board to everybody. I mean, we did not lay anyone off. I mean, even contractors that were manning the front desk with our offices closed. So what we did is we really did a skills inventory of our team and other teams across Fastly that necessarily their jobs were somewhat impacted because of whether it was interviewing or being face-to-face or events, and tried to redistribute those folks across the company. I had folks on my team help out with benefits because now we had COVID and we had a limited benefits team. We had people go into finance. And so right now we are reprioritizing some recs, and we have a decent amount of contractors on board. So I'm just like, okay, let's get the contractors working on all of the recs. And we have been so underwater the last 2 years that we've just been going from rec to rec that we really haven't had a moment to work on any of these projects. And our project list keeps growing. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been brainstorming, like, if we want to increase our time to fill, all the way to quality of hire. Like, what are the things that we can do to make the most impact across the company with the hiring process? And so we have a list of about 60 different things that we want to do. We stack rank them by the impact they're going to make and the difficulty. We've outlined who are all the stakeholders and what are the dependencies. And it was really fun. Last week, we did a project management training for all the recruiters. So the recruiters have the tools they need to be project managers and to own different projects. So we are launching off these projects and getting everyone on the team to lead them, and even projects that are really not necessarily ours, but something that we could benefit from. We're leaning in and helping and getting this across the board. I mean, I want my teams to always, be up-leveling and upskilling them. So for them to be all formal project managers and to understand how each different process can affect different stakeholders. It's kind of the direction we're going right now.
That's really cool. How's that been received from your team? What's the general kind of feedback been?
They're so excited. They're really excited. And I think the benefit of this is because they're all part of changing these processes, it I think will help with engagement and really standing by our processes and sharing them with hiring managers. And once we start, launching and distributing what we've done across the company. And it's also giving them exposure to different parts of the business that they've never worked with before.
Absolutely. And did you have to go and actively seek, buy-in from the company to do that? Did you have to put a business case together to your leadership? How did that work? Or do you just have the full autonomy to make those decisions?
Maybe I should have. I don't know. I didn't necessarily do it. I know we've had this list of projects and priorities going for a long time. So I just let my leader know this is what I'm doing. And then what I also did is I shared this list with our people leadership team. I said, hey, this is what my team is going to be doing for the next several weeks. We're going to be kicking these off. There's going to be 3 different rounds, and the rounds are prioritized by the impact that it has. Please forward this along to your teams because we're going to be partnering with them and wanting to collaborate with them. So it was more of a heads up. And if you want to talk to me about this or you want to go through this list specifically, I'm here for you. But we're just going for it.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess, to the leaders out there who are maybe in this tricky time, and maybe want to try and get buy-in from their leadership or stakeholders, how do you think they should approach that? What would be your advice to leaders who maybe want to do something like this that maybe hasn't been done before?
Yeah, I would start off with a skills inventory, figure out what are the skills that your team has, and then potentially look at those roles that have been deprioritized or paused and see like, hey, this leader obviously needed that type of help. Like, is there a way that we can repurpose somebody and give them new skills on their teams, right? Like if you couldn't hire, even sales, like I think recruiters could make our salespeople and they can make great salespeople. So how could we get them to get on the sales team? Like, just maybe the roles that were no longer being hired for, there's a way to use the talent team there.
Yeah. In the past, we've moved recruits into sales roles and redistributed people, and that's been really successful. Because, like you said, it's a very similar skill set. And so, this kind of brings us on to this environment at the moment, and the way that companies have been growing, really fast, and then having to downsize, and then grow again. What do you think? Why do you think that keeps happening? In this market is.
I mean, I don't know about other companies, but I could say what we've done that's been really impressive is, I would say we've always been growing like 30% year over year. However, it's been very conservative-ish, right? So it's like our revenue increases this much, headcount increases this much, revenue increases. So it's kind of goes step by step. So we've never done hyper growth or just been, throwing out offers. Everything has really been moving at the same speed as revenue.
Has that impacted the culture? Do you think there's like more stability, like better retention? What does, do you see that making impacts?
I don't know if I see that. I mean, I think people still always want more than they can have, right?
Yeah.
More heads. And I think we do. I think we relatively don't have a lot of redundancy at Fastly. I think we still run pretty lean. Like even my team, I think, is relatively small for the size company that we have in growth. But I think that's just the thoughtful way that the executive team has been growing.
Yeah. And do you, I guess you've said that you're building the company in a very, not conservative way, but sensible way, I'd say. You're growing in line with, forecasts and expectations and revenue growth. Do you, I guess, buffer in any ability to deal with spikes and deal with downturns, in that planning? Because I'm sure there are times where maybe it goes a bit faster than you think, or there's more headcount that's delivered. Because I think this is maybe where companies get stuck, right? They may be over high when there is these massive spikes, and that doesn't. It's not consistent. It's not sustainable, and then it ends up inevitably dropping, and they just are over resourced. How have you managed that in the past, or how do you manage that currently?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're managing that through contractors. I think a lot of companies similar to ours don't necessarily. I think a muscle that we're starting to build too is really around headcount planning. And we, are kind of working through that the whole year, and it's constantly changing. So I've leaned into contractors because we still want to keep a really lean team, just so we don't have an excess of capacity on our full-time team.
And how do you manage those contractors? Are they given kind of access to your team? Do you treat them separately? Do they have kind of responsibility over a certain region or skill set? What's your thought process around using contractors like that?
Yeah, I mean, as a team, we like to treat them equally. Like we like to include them in all of our meetings and in all of our celebrations, because we definitely feel like they're helping, contribute just as much as anyone else. And then it really depends. Like I think, we have the tech team and the non-tech team. And so they're just really embedded there. And they're, the tech contractors work with, have hiring managers that they support like anybody else does. And they run their business like any other recruiter on our team would.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, you're getting really deeply involved in, or more involved in, headcount planning. What does that process look like at the moment? How has it evolved then, I guess? How does that then impact, your recruiting team? Is it quite a reactive thing, like month on month? Is it quarter on quarter? Do you have visibility like 6 months ahead or a year ahead? What does that look like?
I mean, right now it's very reactive. It's very reactive, but we're working to get a place. So for next year, it is quarter by quarter, and we are having those conversations. And, all the requests are, hopefully will be tied to priorities and goals for the company.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no matter who I speak to, what size company, no one seems to really get headcount planning right. And it seems to be, I was just speaking to someone the other day about this, seems to be really pushed on recruiting this reactive nature. You've got a plan. Oh, no, you haven't. Always changed. Oh, there's a few more. Oh, there's a few less. Why do you think that's so difficult for companies to get right? Like, it seems like this never-ending issue.
I know. I really don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the best that we do is like, okay, when I hop on a meeting, it's like, okay, I have what our goals are. I have what our capacity is. And it's like, I'm just waiting to flex either way. It's like, if we need this, it's like, okay, well, here's the capacity that we have. If we want to hit that target, like, this is what I'm going to need. Just, pure math. But yeah, I'm, and maybe that's what keeps me here at Fastly too. I'm just waiting for this to like, waiting to see what headcount planning looks like.
Once it's done, you're like, okay, that's it. I've hit the holy grail. I can move on. It's. I wonder if it's because just forecasting is so difficult to get right. If you look at the levers that are being pulled to determine, headcount, it's normally revenue-related goals, I guess, and it's very hard to be very accurate with that prediction. I think maybe that's what happens is.
Yeah, I mean,
everyone has good intentions.
I think everybody has great intentions. I think what would be interesting is, I think like each department has their recs that they want prioritized. I think it would be an interesting place to see them also prioritized amongst all the departments. I think that would be really interesting. So, at any point, everyone at the company knows like, hey, right now, if we're hitting these goals, we need to prioritize, let's say, product over sales, or like, you know what I mean? Just to even stack rank them amongst all of them with the leaders, I think would be really great conversation, just so everyone's aligned.
How have you found the most effective way to prioritize? When there's a lot of demand on your team, you've got different business leaders coming at you from different angles. How do your team prioritize that workload? And what have you found the most effective way to do that?
I mean, right now, we really let the prioritization fall with the leader of that department for them to let us know what's most important for them. I think it's nice when, some leaders have specific criteria that they have to determine what's a priority, whether it's like, okay, this is going to help us, hit a goal, generate revenue, release a product. So I think different leaders have different type of criteria to determine it. And I think that makes it really helpful. I always like it when the leaders also gift us with their time so they can really explain to us, what are the goals of their department and what that looks like and what's changing. So the more education that they could give my team and more business acumen, I really think it ends up resulting in better hires and more engagement across the board too. So it's like when they are prioritizing, also educating us on like why.
And one of the things that I consistently see, and you probably see it, is that in busy periods, it's very easy for recruiters to get overloaded and over capacity. Do you have like a model that you use that your team has? It's like, okay, each recruiter has a maximum of 10 reps each, or 15 reps, or 6 reps. What have you found to be the kind of optimal capacity model for your recruitment team?
Yeah, so right now it's 10 unique recs. So we do 10 unique recs, meaning like if there's like 5 account managers, that doesn't necessarily count as 5 recs. I mean, we'll be pretty flexible there. But we have a really high touch recruiting process, and we don't necessarily have a huge we have one sourcer. So the recruiters are doing a lot. So I think if we had more sourcers that we could, flex a little bit. We have some recruiters that are more senior that can. Again, it depends on the role, but we try not to go more than 10. There's some recruiters who have more experience or are, these are high volume roles that they're very familiar with, that they can take more. But especially on the tech side, we try to cap it at 10.
I'm guessing those 10 are prioritized in different levels, or they all, yeah, that seems to be the magic number that people talk about. I'm really interested. I've never done this myself, and I'm really interested in finding out more about it. But I've seen a lot of companies use this point-based recruiting system recently.
Ooh, what's
where,
that?
So recruiters get like a certain amount of points, like 10 points, for example, that they need to hit per month, per quarter, whatever it might be. And then they assign different points to different roles and different levels. So, a VP might be 5 points, say, software engineer might be 5 points, then a junior salesperson might be 1 point. And that's how you assign people's capacity. So it's like, okay, the max you can be at is 10 points by your workload. And that's kind of how you're measured on delivery as well. I might have completely butchered that because I've never done it. This is just what I've heard third party. But
yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think that's
I'll try and find out.
It sounds really fair, right? Because it's not, 10 VPs isn't the same as 10 junior sellers.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing with recruiting is that you get people who, will be given different roles, different difficulty and different levels and different time. And there's always the, comeback on people and their performance. Well, I've got harder roles. I'm dealing with a difficult stakeholder. I'm dealing with a more senior position. And I think the point system for me is one of the best methods that conceptually makes more sense into creating that like equilibrium across everyone, and that fairness in how you can performance manage your team and have more quality on like people's outcome and output. So maybe I should find out more about that and do a podcast on it. But
yeah, I think you should, because I think there's going to be a lot of data. Like you can see, like for these roles, how long does it take to fill the role typically, right? Like I think that you can use what you already have to actually distribute points for each role.
Yeah. So maybe that's what we try and do next.
Yeah.
But Shirin, really enjoyed speaking to you. I've learned a lot just by speaking. And it's very impressive what you've done. I love what you've done during these downturns. I mean, your team must be like over the moon. I know that it's a tough time out there for a lot of recruiters. The fact that you're giving people the opportunity to upskill is excellent. The last question I'd like to ask you is, and I ask this to everyone, is what are you most excited about in the recruitment space at the moment and for the future of talent acquisition? What gets you most excited?
I think what gets me most excited is, I just love the people aspect of it all. And I feel like we're still able to change people's lives. And I think I have a team of empathetic salespeople who that's their one main thing, is that they just love changing people's lives and giving these offers and getting them and making people happy. And I think that's still my favorite part and the part that gets me excited.
Awesome. Changing lives one hire at a time.
One hire at a time.
Great to speak to you, Shirin. And catch you later.
Great. Thanks.